Welcome to the Nogtog channel. The day before the wedding, my boyfriend's first love sent me intimate photos of the two of them from abroad and asked me if I still wanted to get married. I endured it, but I didn't expect my first love to provoke me. I rushed to the country and gave them both a big slap. Our story officially begins. The WeChat alarm went off, and my friend and I were still happily decorating the wedding room, not noticing that the phone was ringing. After staying up late, I asked my friend to stay in the next room, and I finished washing up and got ready for bed. Before going to bed, I habitually picked up my phone to check for messages, and I saw that WeChat had indicated that a friend had added me, with a note saying that her name was Bingqin Yu Jia. Curious, I clicked on her profile picture, and found that she inexplicably looked like someone else. After I clicked to agree to add her as a friend, the other person immediately sent me a photo. I clicked to open it and saw that it was my fiancé lying on the bed with his eyes closed, sleeping, and next to him was another woman. I could somehow remember who it was. Shen Qingqing, a woman from the same university and department as me. She was my fiancé Chanzian's first love, but because she did not like the fact that he was too poor at that time, she decided to break up with him and go study abroad. Later, I was assigned to the same group as Chanzian for my internship, and during that time we worked together hand in hand, sharing both the good and the bad times. Gradually we fell in love, and after he decided to start a business, the two of us started a company on our own. 3 years after starting the business, the company began to stabilize and the two of us each owned half of the company's shares. After we finally stabilized, he proposed to me and I said yes. Our wedding is scheduled for the day after tomorrow. I asked her what this was about, and she said that Chanzian had come to the United States some time ago, and asked me if I was still willing to marry him. I rebuffed her and could not sleep that night. Early the next morning, I ran to the company to find Chanzian. He had just left an urgent meeting and was taking a break in his office. I opened the office door and asked him what was wrong with the photo. He froze for a moment. He explained that he had been on a business trip to the United States and had gotten drunk, and that Shen Qingqing had met him by chance and taken him home to look after him for the night. I didn't know whether to believe him or not, so I angrily threw all the documents on his desk onto the floor. He ran over and hugged me and said, "Nian Nian, don't be angry, or you'll upset the baby. I swear I've never cheated on you." Thinking of the baby in my womb, I calmed down and hugged him tightly and said, "Yan, don't betray me, you're the only one I have." The reason I said that was because my parents had died in a car accident the year before. Before they died, Chanzian took my parents' hands and told them that he would protect me for the rest of my life. That was the end of the little incident, and the wedding went on as planned the next day. Chanzian gave me a grand wedding, and I felt like the happiest person in the world that day. 6 months after the wedding, I gave birth to a daughter whom Chanzian named Chan Manman. Manman is very smart, and she learned to walk and talk earlier than other children her age. But Chanzian's parents prefer boys to girls, and they don't like Manman. They keep urging me to have another son with Chanzian, but Chanzian really likes Manman. After the confinement period, I immediately returned to work, so I often used work to distract her. But how could she not see it? She often said bad things about me behind Chanzian's back, and I could only turn a blind eye. When Manman was old enough to go to elementary school, things changed. I never thought that woman would come back. Chanzian and I went together to enroll Manman in kindergarten. We went to the best primary school in town, Yangguang Primary School. Just as we were about to go to the office to register, I saw a familiar figure at the corner of the stairs. It was Shen Qingqing. At that moment, I was scared and wanted to drag her away. Chanzian angrily said, "Why are you leaving? You chose this primary school yourself, and all the admission procedures have been completed. Where else would you go?" Manman also came over and took my hand and said, "Mom, Manman likes it here. Can she go to school here?" Unable to resist Manman's soft soap, I finally agreed. But when it came time to sign the papers, I deliberately asked the teacher to show me the subjects taught in Manman's class. I was relieved when I didn't see Shen Qingqing's name. On the way home, Chanzian said that I was acting strangely and asked me to stay home and rest for a few days and not to go to work. But how could I not see what was going on in his mind? I had built up the whole company, and the key people in the company were more in line with me. He is naturally unhappy about this, and I know his character well. Today, Shen Qingqing's appearance really surprised me, and I also felt that I really should take some time off, so I accepted his suggestion. After that, in order to prevent Chan Ziyan and Shen Qingqing from running into each other, I personally went to the primary school every day to pick up Man. I thought that would prevent everything, but I was wrong. Shen Qingqing's target is Chan Ziyan. That day, I went to a business dinner with my colleagues to win a big client. But the dinner dragged on, and it was time for Man to come home from school, and we still hadn't closed the deal. I was really worried, so I decided to call the nanny at home to pick up Man. Just as I stepped out of the private room, Chan Ziyan's phone rang. Nian, I'll be off early today, so I'll pick up Man and you can enjoy dinner. No, I'll ask Luma to go. You finished work early today, so go home and rest. No, Nian will be very happy when she sees me picking her up. I tried to stop him, but the call had already been disconnected. I was a little distracted. What if they met? No, I've been there so many times and we've never met. It's not that kind of coincidence, I reassured myself. Just then, Xiaozhou came over and told me to go back to the private room. With a coincidence mentality, I could only pray to God that they wouldn't meet. Chan Ziyan wondered why Sang Nian didn't let him pick up his daughter, but today he finished work before her so he could surprise her. It only took 20 minutes to drive from the company to Yangguang Primary School. Chan Ziyan parked the car in the parking lot next to the school, and walked towards the school building with the strawberry cake in his hand. He remembered that Man was in the 3rd class of the 1st grade, so he followed the classroom numbers and went to the door of the 3rd class of the 1st grade. Chan Ziyan was considered an early parent, and the class teacher, Ms. Zhou, came out. Hello, which child are you here to pick up? Chan Man, I am her father. Teacher Zhou took a closer look at him and smiled. I'm sorry, Dad Man, because before it was always Mom Man who picked up Man, so I don't know you very well. That's okay. I finished work early today, so I'm here to pick up Man from school for my wife. Everyone in the classroom was shocked by Chan Ziyan, and many of the children said to Chan Man, I never thought your mother was a beauty, and your father is also a handsome guy. Chan Man nodded arrogantly. That's right, why else would I be so cute? Teacher Zhou called out to Chan Man, and as the two of them were about to leave, a soft voice came from behind them. Man, wait a minute. Chan Ziyan looked in the direction of the voice and saw a face he had almost forgotten. It was Shen Qingqing. She said apologetically, I'm sorry, Man. I forgot to give you your Chinese homework book. Oh, thank you, Miss Shen. Shen Qingqing gave her a gentle smile in return. Teacher Zhou hurriedly explained, this is the substitute Chinese teacher for class 3 because the previous teacher, Miss Su, went on maternity leave. Shen Qingqing still had a polite smile on her face as she said goodbye to Man. Chan Ziyan didn't say much and quickly took Man out of the school. I didn't go home until the middle of the night after drinking. Xiaozhou drove me home. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Man running out of the living room, calling out, Mommy. I felt so sad and quickly hugged her. Baby, why are you up so late sleeping? I gently stroked her hair. Daddy said Mommy had to go to a business dinner and wouldn't be back until late. I'm afraid Mommy is drunk, so I want to wait until Mommy gets back to go to sleep. My Man is very obedient. A super obedient good girl. I kissed her hair and took her upstairs to bed. After Man fell asleep, I could finally stop pretending to be relaxed. When I opened the bedroom door, Chan Ziyan seemed to have fallen asleep and there was no light in the room. I forced myself to resist the urge to vomit, rushed to the toilet, and after vomiting I felt completely revived. Afraid of disturbing Chan Ziyan's rest, I quietly took a shower and quickly climbed into bed. I couldn't sleep all night. Chan Ziyan was facing away from me, and he seemed to be sleeping soundly. It seemed like he hadn't run into Shen Qingqing today, so I was relieved. The next morning, I got up as usual and took Man to the kindergarten. The next few days passed peacefully. But one day when I went to pick up Man from school, I happened to see Shen Qingqing's name on the class schedule posted on the door. At that moment I froze. Just then the class teacher came over to greet me. Mother of Man, are you here to pick up Man again? The teacher's voice brought me back to reality, and I asked with a pretense of composure, Teacher Zhou, I thought Man's previous Chinese teacher was not Teacher Su? Why was she replaced by this teacher Shen? Oh, it's like this. The previous teacher Sue went home on maternity leave, and I didn't inform the parent group about it, so I'm really sorry. This Miss Shen doesn't seem to know her name, so can't you replace her with an experienced Chinese teacher? Man, don't worry about it. Miss Shen has studied abroad, and the quality of her teaching is commendable. Besides, she recently won the first prize for provincial teachers. The more I listened to her, the more I felt an inexplicable panic in my heart. I must not let her get close to Man. Personally, I can't accept this new teacher, especially one who has studied abroad and has a touch of foreignness. Teacher Zhou seemed to be surprised by my question, and her expression was a little awkward. Don't worry, Teacher Shen won't be here for long either. She submitted a transfer application to the school some time ago, and it looks like she's going to teach at another school. Seeing that the teacher wasn't going to be replaced, I didn't make things difficult for Teacher Zhou anymore. But that made me suspect that Shen Qingqing's intentions were not pure. Recently, before Lu Ma did the laundry, I would carefully check Chen Ziyan's clothes again and again, and I would also check his phone at night after he fell asleep. Everything about him was clean, which told me that he wasn't cheating on me, but I didn't believe it. After that, I always pushed him to go to drinking parties so that Man wouldn't have to wait for me at home until the middle of the night. I also secretly followed Chen Ziyan after work, but there was nothing wrong with his behavior. That day, the company suddenly had a big cooperation project, and we had to go to Hong Kong in person to discuss the cooperation. Chen Ziyan asked me to stay at home and keep Man company while he went to negotiate. I agreed, and this cooperation was to last for a week. I couldn't sleep at night, and suddenly I thought about checking out Shen Qingqing's circle of friends. I removed her from the blacklist. I hadn't looked at her WeChat for many years, and I was immediately attracted to her profile picture. After I clicked in, I found a photo of her in a man's arms, but I couldn't see the man's face, just his neck. Her circle of friends has been visible for 3 days, and the most recent post was made yesterday. The picture is of a city at night, with rows of buildings, and the caption reads, "An unforgettable night." No location is given, but I know it definitely wasn't the city. With doubts in my mind, when I dropped Man off at school the next day, I specifically asked Teacher Zhou, "Teacher Zhou, I would like to ask if I can talk to Teacher Shen for a moment. Recently, Man's Chinese grades have improved too quickly, and I want to thank Teacher Shen. Oh, Miss Shen was sent to Hong Kong for an exchange a few days ago and won't be back for a week. There are still 3 days left, so I'll let you know when she gets back." Okay. Thank you, Miss Zhou. I picked up my bag and walked out of the office. This was definitely not easy. They were having an affair. From that moment on, the seed of revenge was planted in my heart. I would make them pay. However, the only thing I could do now was to stay calm and get some evidence against them without alarming them. As expected, Chen Ziyan returned 3 days later. What he didn't know was how much I had been tortured during those 3 days, but I didn't want to expose him directly. I wanted to see how long he could keep up the pretense. I went to work every day as usual and drove Man to and from school. Chen Ziyan acted normal at first, but then he became more and more erratic. He always had an excuse for working overtime, and he often came home late or not at all. One afternoon when I went to pick up Man from school, Mr. Zhou told me that Shen Qingqing had resigned for unknown reasons. This was not good news for me, because Chen Ziyan had begun to avoid going home. That night, there was a torrential downpour with thunder and lightning outside the mansion. Man suddenly developed a high fever and kept calling for her father. Man looked very much like Chen Ziyan, and she kissed him more than me. We had used up all the fever-reducing medicine and bandages at home, and I was afraid to go to the hospital in such heavy rain. Chen Ziyan said he was working overtime again today, and would be back late at night. In my panic, the first thing I thought of was to call him, but he didn't answer any of the 3 consecutive calls. I kept calling him, but since it was a holiday, I asked the nanny Lu Ma to go home, so there were only 2 of us at home, Man and me. When we chose a wedding house, I deliberately chose a luxurious villa on the outskirts of the city. Everyone who lives here is either rich or noble, but the only drawback is that you have to go a long way to find a family. But people here are usually away from home all year round. I was so worried at home that I almost cried. Man-Man's fever wouldn't go down, so all I could do was bring a basin of cool water, dip a cloth in it, and press it against Man-Man's forehead. I did this many times, but Man-Man's fever still wouldn't go down. I saw that her little face was already red with fever. I knelt down in front of Man-Man's bed and prayed that she would get better soon. The fever didn't go down all night, and I cried until I was a blubbering mess in front of Man-Man's bed. In the middle of the night, Man-Man woke up once and took my hand. In a hoarse voice she said to me, "Mommy, don't cry. Man-Man doesn't want Daddy anymore. When Man-Man grows up, she'll protect Mommy." I cried so hard that I could hardly breathe. Finally, it was dawn, and the torrential rain outside had stopped. I quickly picked up my daughter and walked out the door. The rain was up to my knees and I shivered as I stepped out, but I dared not stop. After carefully placing Man-Man in the car, I drove all the way to the hospital. The results were not good. The doctor said that Man-Man's vocal cords had been severely damaged due to the fact that she had been burning for a night, and if the situation was not good, she might not be able to speak for the rest of her life. I suddenly felt so cruel to myself for not exposing Chanzian's ugly behavior earlier, because my repeated delays had caused Man-Man so much harm. This time, I won't let them get away with it. Chanzian returned home early the next morning. There had been a power outage due to the heavy rain the night before, and his phone had been turned off. He turned it on in the morning and saw that Sang Nian had called him so many times. He had spent the night with Shan Qingqing because she was pregnant and his. On that business trip to Hong Kong, his boss forced him to drink a lot. He happened to run into Shan Qingqing that day, and Shan Qingqing took him back to the hotel without his consent. To be honest, when he decided to marry Sang Nian, Chanzian was determined to forget Shan Qingqing. In fact, when he met her at Yongguang Primary School that day, his heart was not very stirred. He knew that he was a family man with a well-behaved daughter and a beautiful and generous wife, and he would never cheat in his life. But that night, Shan Qingqing made him remember their romance in college. Chanzian had loved her deeply, and that couldn't be changed. So, unable to resist the temptation, he ended up making a mistake. He thought their relationship was over. But 3 months after his return, Shan Qingqing found him and told him that she was pregnant and that the child was his. Chanzian felt as if the sky had fallen. His first reaction was to get an abortion because he already had a family. But Shan Qingqing told him that she had gone to the hospital for a checkup, and the doctor, who was a classmate of hers, had secretly told her that she was pregnant with a son. Chanzian finally relented. He bought Shan Qingqing a house in the city so that she could live in peace and raise the baby. Shan Qingqing promised him that as soon as the baby was born, she would take the child and live abroad, and not bother Chanzian's family. However, in the meantime, Chanzian had to bear all the expenses and he agreed. So he went to Shan Qingqing's house every day to see her, and accompany her to medical checkups. When he got home, he saw that no one was at home, and his heart began to feel inexplicably nervous. He quickly called Sang Nian, but there was no answer. Chanzian called many times and finally, when he was about to give up, she answered. "Nian Nian, where are you and Man-Man? Why is no one at home?" His voice was urgent, but at that moment my heart was already dead. The First People's Hospital in downtown. Man-Man is in the hospital. I'll be right there. After saying that, he immediately went to the hospital. Chanzian arrived at the hospital as fast as he could and found the ward where Man-Man was, based on the information Sang Nian had given him. He opened the door and I saw him appear in the doorway. Some buttons on his collar were undone. His clothes weren't as neat as usual, and there was water and mud on the hem of his pants. He rushed over and asked what happened to Man-Man. I stared at him with bloodshot eyes and said the cruelest words I could find. The doctor said she won't be able to speak again. Chanzian froze when he heard this and asked, "What on earth is going on?" His questioning tone made me laugh. I grabbed his collar and shouted, "Man-Man had a high fever last night, and I called you so many times but you didn't answer. Chanzian, who are you to ask me what's wrong? I should ask you where you were last night." He didn't say anything, so I pushed him hard and he fell to the ground. "Chanzian, where were you last night? I asked you, you should know that it rained heavily last night. Why did you not come back so late?" "I was working overtime at the company last night. My phone ran out of battery, and it was raining heavily so I didn't feel like going home." His explanation became weak and feeble. Haha, he's still arguing, I said to myself. Chanzian, don't let me catch you cheating, or I'll really catch you. At that time, Man suddenly woke up. I saw her trying to speak with a painful expression on her face, but she couldn't make a sound and my heart ached. I quickly went over and held her hand. Baby, don't rush to speak. I bought you some congee, would you like to eat some? Man nodded obediently and I fed her. Bite by bite. It wasn't long before I took Man out of the hospital. Since then, Man rarely spoke to Chanzian, but she clung to me even tighter, even though she still couldn't make a sound. I didn't want to let Chanzian go so easily. He was very cautious and secretive, and it was usually impossible to find a loophole. I had to start with Shan Qingqing. I found out the location of the apartment complex where she used to live from the school, and started to watch her every day. The owner of the apartment told me that she didn't come back often, and it seemed that she was living with her boyfriend, but I believed that she would definitely come back to get her things. Sure enough, after a week of waiting, I finally waited for Shan Qingqing. She got out of the taxi with a slightly swollen belly, and it looked like she had been pregnant for a few months. I felt bad. After Shan Qingqing took out her things, she got into a taxi and left. I followed her in my car. She stopped in a residential area downtown, not far from the office. I saw her go in, so I tried to follow her, but I was stopped by the security guard. I didn't want to miss this opportunity, so I begged security guard, please let me in. I'm a relative of the owner of this apartment complex and I have an emergency. No, unless you want a family member to pick you up. Seeing that I couldn't get in, I had to change the subject. Security, the woman who just went in seems to be my high school classmate. We were good friends in high school, but we lost touch after that. I think she's pregnant. Do you know if her boyfriend is treating her well? The guard looked at the woman's back in the distance and said, she has a boyfriend. Her boyfriend comes to see her a lot. He is very good looking and rich. It was her boyfriend who bought the house. I see. Thank you, security guard. I clenched my fists, a look of hatred in my eyes, and secretly vowed that they would pay a price. But what worried me the most was that Man's voice still hadn't recovered. The little girl didn't cry or make a fuss, but when she couldn't speak, she would write it down for me on a piece of white paper. Sometimes she used pinyin to replace words she couldn't write. Looking at such a well-behaved and intelligent daughter, I decided that I had to punish the two bastards. In the following days, I began to regain my dominant position in the company, and decided to open a subsidiary company, and slowly transfer all the funds to it. This was the first step of my revenge. The second step was to expose them and make them afraid and worried. Chanzian is truly incompetent. It didn't take me more than a month to transfer most of the company's funds. I think it's time to surprise him. That day after work, I followed Chanzian and found that he really went to Shan Qingqing's apartment complex. Some time ago, I secretly bought an apartment here, so I successfully swiped my face to enter the complex. After Chanzian had been inside for a while, I knocked on the door. The moment the door opened, I saw Chanzian freeze. Aren't you going to explain to me? Yin, who is it? Shan Qingqing's voice came from inside. I forced my way in and happened to see Shan Qingqing coming out of the kitchen. She was also frozen. Chanzian was the first to react, and he knelt on the floor to apologize to me. Yin, I'm sorry. Qingqing is pregnant, and the baby is mine. She is pregnant with a boy. My parents always wanted a grandchild, and you said you didn't want any more children. Please let this child be born, okay? Chanzian, is that your reason for cheating? No, Yin, please forgive me. When Man was sick, I called you again and again, but you refused to answer just to be here with your future son. You really let me down. Yin, no, my phone was really turned off that day, and I was looking for the best doctor to cure Yin's voice. Chanzian, I can promise you to keep the baby. Yin, really? Yes, but the condition is that you give me another 5% of your shares in the company. Chanzian thought for a while and then slowly said, okay, I promise. As for why I willingly agreed to keep the baby, it was mainly because a man named Guochang had come to see me earlier. He said he was Shan Qingqing's overseas boyfriend. He was a rich second generation, but his family suddenly went bankrupt, so Shan Qingqing broke up with him. Later, he returned to China and found Shen Qingqing. The two of them rekindled their old love, and soon they discovered that Shen Qingqing was pregnant. He was very happy, but his family soon fell into debt again. When Shen Qingqing found out, she broke up with him again. This time he refused, so Shen Qingqing just threw a lot of money at him and told him to go away. I asked him why he found me, and he said that he wanted to ask me for hush money because he knew that the lover Shen Qingqing was seeing was my husband, and that I was the boss. I gave him some money and asked him to do me a favor in the future, which was to tell the truth at the boy's birthday party 3 years after he was born. He asked me why I was so sure that they would get married. I knew Chen Ziyan and his parents, and I just asked him to make sure it would happen. He agreed. Then I secretly told Chen Ziyan's parents that Shen Qingqing was pregnant. Of course, it didn't take long for them to contact Chen Ziyan. What I didn't expect was that Chen Ziyan would never divorce me, so I had to raise the stakes. The next day, his parents showed up at the door and insisted that I divorce Chen Ziyan. I secretly sent a message to Chen Ziyan. When he returned home, he heard his parents shouting angrily, "Songnian, you good for nothing, you can't even give birth to a son, and you brought such a mute child. You've ruined my family's dream of having a grandson. Now that Qingqing has finally become pregnant with my family's child, you still want her to have an abortion. You heartless woman, you deserve to die. Mom, what are you doing?" Chen Ziyan came over to stop his mother. I was holding Man, who was crying and scared, and when I saw Chen Ziyan come over, I pretended to say in a crying voice, "Chen Ziyan, your mother is like this, let's get a divorce. Anyway, your family doesn't like Man, so you can give me custody of the child. I'll see you at the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow." I took Man with me and left the mansion. I had already received all the family's belongings in advance at another house in the city center. I had also told Man in advance, and I thought she would object, but I was surprised that she was very supportive. I left everything else to Chen Ziyan's parents, and I was sure they would do what I wanted. The next day I went to the Civil Affairs Bureau early in the morning, but Chen Ziyan was half an hour late, which made me very angry. When it came time to sign the papers, he seemed to be deliberately stalling, but I was not angry and waited calmly until he had finished. After receiving the divorce certificate, I breathed a sigh of relief. I was finally divorced. He said he would leave everything behind and make it up to me and Man. That was not what I expected. I thought he would be so selfish that he wouldn't give me a penny, but I definitely wouldn't give him a penny. By the winter, I had successfully transferred all my assets to a subsidiary company and completely deregistered the original company, Chen Ziyan. From then on, I had no more ties with Chen Ziyan. Coincidentally, Shen Qingqing was born at that time, and it was indeed a son, which made Chen Ziyan's family very happy for a long time, and they even threw a big banquet. I didn't take Man out of town, and she continued to attend the original primary school. During that time I took her abroad for treatment, and fortunately her voice was cured. When Man was in the 4th grade, Chen Ziyan's family held a birthday party for the boy. I waited quietly at home for news of Guocheng. That day, when everyone was at their happiest, Guocheng suddenly appeared in the hall, holding a paternity test, and walked over to Chen Ziyan. Shen Qingqing's face turned white. Then Guocheng sent me a message. "The great revenge has been avenged." I slowly smiled. Since then, Chen Ziyan's parents have been ill. He divorced Shen Qingqing, and he came to see me and Man every day, trying to make us feel sorry for him. It so happened that Su Heng, the doctor who was in charge of Man's treatment abroad, had returned to China, so I took his hand and told Chen Ziyan, "We are already together, please respect yourself." After Chen Ziyan left, I apologized to Dr. Su, but Dr. Su took my hand and said, "Miss Sang, please advise me for the rest of your life.